Thomas Harris, a devoted police officer, made a life-changing decision 19 years ago when he adopted 6 unwanted black girls. He raised them with love and commitment despite the challenges they faced as a multiracial family in a small town. Now, 2 decades later, Thomas's health is failing, and the girls are all grown. But what they do next to repay the man who gave them everything will leave you speechless. In a small town of North Carolina nestled in the heart of America's heartland, where oak-lined streets meet quaint storefronts and everyone knows their neighbors by name. At the center of this tight-knit community stood Officer Thomas Harris, a fixture of law enforcement for nearly 2 decades. His experienced eyes told the story of countless nights on patrol, keeping watch over the town he called home. Thomas's cruiser rolled slowly down the main street, his keen eyes scanning the familiar surroundings as he passed Mrs. Rita's flower shop. She waved cheerfully from behind a display of bright potted plants. Thomas nodded back, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Morning, Mrs. Rita," he called out, his voice warm. "Oh, Thomas, will we see you at the church picnic this Sunday?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with hope. Thomas's smile faltered slightly. "We'll see, Mrs. Rita. Duty calls, you know." As he drove away, Thomas couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. He knew Mrs. Rita meant well, but social gatherings had become increasingly difficult since Helen's passing. His wife's absence left a void that seemed to grow with each passing year. Back at the station, Thomas's fellow officers greeted him with a mix of respect and caution. They admired his dedication to the job, but his stern demeanor often kept them at arm's length. "Thomas, got a minute?" called out Sergeant Paul Peterson, Thomas's longtime friend and colleague. Thomas nodded, following Paul into his office. "What's on your mind, Paul?" Paul leaned back in his chair, concern etched on his face. "Thomas, I've been meaning to talk to you. The guys and we're worried about you. It's been 10 years since Helen, your wife, passes away. Don't you think it's time to start living again?" Thomas's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on a point just over Paul's shoulder. "I appreciate the concern, Paul, but I'm fine. The job keeps me busy enough." Paul sighed, recognizing the familiar walls Thomas had built around himself. All right. Just remember, you've got friends here. We're here if you need us." As Thomas left the office, he couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that seemed to follow him everywhere. His house, once filled with the promise of a family, now stood as a silent reminder of what could have been. Each night he'd return to the quiet rooms, surrounded by memories of Helen and the children they dreamed of having. Little did Thomas know, fate was about to intervene in the most unexpected way. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when the call came in. Thomas was on patrol, his mind wandering to the upcoming winter and the repairs his old house needed. The crackle of the radio snapped him back to attention. "All units, we have a situation at 2815 Meg Street. Possible abandonment case involving multiple minors. Proceed with caution." Thomas's heart raced as he flipped on his siren and sped toward the address. As he pulled up to the small, dilapidated house, he could hear the faint sound of crying coming from inside. Approaching cautiously, Thomas knocked on the door. "Police. Is anyone home?" The crying intensified, and Thomas made the decision to enter. What he found inside would change his life forever. 6 young black girls, ranging from barely a toddler to a preteen, huddled together in the corner of a barren living room. Their wide eyes, filled with fear and uncertainty, locked on Thomas as he entered. "It's okay," Thomas said softly, crouching down to their level. "I'm here to help. Can you tell me what happened?" The oldest girl, her braids neatly arranged despite the chaos around her, spoke up. "Our parents. There was an accident. They didn't come home. We've been waiting." Her voice trailed off, choked with emotion. Thomas's heart broke for these children. As he radioed for backup and child protective services, he couldn't help but feel a deep connection to these 6 frightened souls. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Social workers arrived, taking statements and assessing the situation. Thomas learned that the girls' parents had been killed in a car accident earlier that week. With no immediate family to take them in, the girls were facing separation and placement in the foster care system. As Thomas overheard snippets of the social worker's conversation, he realized the challenges they faced. Difficult to place all six together. The older ones might have trouble finding homes. Cultural challenges for potential adoptive families. Something stirred within him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. He found himself speaking before he even realized it. What if I took them? The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Thomas in disbelief. Even Thomas himself seemed shocked by his own words. The lead social worker, a kind woman named Linda, approached him carefully. "Officer Harris, I appreciate your concern, but taking in 6 children is a massive responsibility. Not to mention the cultural differences and potential challenges you'd face as a single white man adopting black children." Thomas nodded, his mind racing. "I understand that, but I can't bear the thought of these girls being separated. They've already lost so much." Linda studied his face, seeing the determination in his eyes. "Why don't we discuss this further at the station? It's not a decision to be made lightly." As they prepared to leave, the oldest girl approached Thomas, her young face etched with worry. "Sir, what's going to happen to us?" Thomas knelt down, meeting her gaze. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Anna," she replied softly. "Anna, I want you to know that I'm going to do everything I can to keep you and your sisters together. Can you be brave for me and look after your sisters while we figure things out?" Anna nodded solemnly, her eyes never leaving Thomas's face. As he stood and followed the social workers out of the house, he knew his life was about to change in a way he couldn't have predicted. Thomas adopts Anna, Simone, Tiana, Zoe, Layla, and little Jasmine. His life, once filled with quiet solitude, now echoes with laughter, sisterly squabbles, and the overwhelming joy and challenges of being a father. Thomas faces many obstacles, including learning how to care for the girls in ways he never imagined, like mastering the art of braiding hair, becoming an expert at mediating fights, and discovering the beauty of their cultural experiences. The family grows stronger, and Thomas realizes that love and family are built through patience, resilience, and dedication. As the years went by, Thomas became not just a police officer to the town of North Carolina, but the father figure who everyone admired. He navigated his newfound role with as much care and precision as he did his work on the force. But now, the challenges were at home. There were moments of doubt, moments when he questioned his ability to give these girls the life they deserved. Each girl had her own set of challenges. Anna, the eldest, took on a motherly role, often shielding her younger sisters from the world and bearing the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Simone, rebellious yet strong-willed, was often at odds with Thomas, testing his patience. Tiana, quiet and introspective, had difficulty adjusting to a new life after the trauma of losing her parents. Zoe and Layla, the middle pair, constantly bickered and fought, but their bond was unbreakable. Then there was little Jasmine, whose infectious laughter and boundless energy reminded Thomas that joy, no matter how fleeting, could be found in even the toughest of times. But through all the hardships, there were beautiful moments too. The girls would sit on the porch in the summer evenings, Thomas watching as they taught him about their culture, their traditions, their music, and their food. He became a father not just in name, but in action. He celebrated their victories, Zoe's soccer championship, Anna's high school graduation, and Simone's success in the art competition. He helped them heal after their defeats, when Tiana failed a test, or when Layla struggled with her identity as a young black woman in a mostly white town. He didn't have all the answers, but Thomas gave his daughters something far more valuable than advice. He gave them unwavering love and a deep sense of belonging. And over time, the people of the town began to notice. Mrs. Rita, who had once invited him to the church picnic all those years ago, became a frequent visitor to the Harris household, often bringing over her famous potato salad or homemade pies for the family. The local baker, Mr. Turner, would stop by with cookies for the girls, and the town's school principal, Mrs. Larkin, often took a special interest in their progress. Thomas's family had become the town's family, a symbol of what love could do when given the chance. But now, as the years passed and the girls grew older, Thomas could feel the clock ticking. His health, which had been gradually deteriorating over the past few years, began to show more signs of wear. His once strong hands now shook slightly as he gripped the steering wheel of his patrol car. The weight of the years of raising these 6 incredible young women, was beginning to take its toll. One evening, as he sat in the living room with his daughters, watching a movie, Anna turned to him, her face reflecting a seriousness that seemed to pierce through the normal bustle of their lives. "Dad," she said softly, "you need to take care of yourself. We all know it's been getting harder for you to keep up. You don't have to do everything alone." Thomas blinked, surprised by the maturity in her voice. He had always thought he was the one who needed to be strong for them. Now, he realized they had grown into young women who were strong in their own right, each one with a piece of him in their hearts. "You're right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I'd be here. But I'm here, and I'm proud of all of you." "We're proud of you too, Dad," Anna replied, her voice full of emotion. "You didn't just give us a home. You gave us a family. A chance to live." That moment, as simple as it seemed, marked a turning point. Thomas realized that his purpose, beyond being a police officer, had always been to be their father. It wasn't just about providing for them materially or keeping them safe. It was about showing them what love, perseverance, and resilience looked like. As Thomas grew weaker, the girls rallied around him, taking on more responsibility around the house and in the community. They supported him, not just as their father, but as the man who had changed their lives in ways they could never fully express. The town began to take notice of how much they had grown, and more importantly, how much they were determined to make their father proud. One crisp fall day, when the air was thick with the promise of change, the girls gathered around Thomas, who was resting in his favorite chair. They each took a moment to thank him for everything he had done. It was Anna who spoke up, her voice strong yet filled with emotion. "Dad," she said, her voice unwavering, "we've been thinking. You've done so much for us. Now we want to do something for you. You taught us that family isn't just blood, it's who you choose to love. And we're not just your daughters. We're your legacy." With that, Anna stood and moved to the front door, opening it to reveal the town outside. As if on cue, the entire community, friends and strangers alike, began to pour into the Harris household, bringing food, flowers, and heartfelt messages of gratitude. Mrs. Rita was there, with tears in her eyes. Mr. Turner was there, holding a box of cookies. Even the town's mayor showed up, offering Thomas a heartfelt handshake and saying, "You've done more for this town than anyone could ask. We'll take care of you, Thomas." The girls, tears glistening in their eyes, stood behind their father as the town celebrated the man who had changed their lives, who had opened his heart to them when no one else would. And for the first time in years, Thomas allowed himself to feel something he hadn't in a long time: peace. In that moment, he realized that he had created something far more important than his work in law enforcement, far more meaningful than his role in the community. He had created a family. And in return, his daughters and the town had built a legacy of love, respect, and unwavering support. And as he sat surrounded by those he loved, Thomas Harris knew that, despite the inevitable, his life had been one of purpose, and that the greatest gift he could ever receive had already been given to him: the love and devotion of 6 remarkable daughters who had repaid him in the most profound way possible, with a life lived fully and together.